This is called Save Your Employees from Boring Repetitive Tasks Without Extensive Custom Development, or better known as Power Automate Desktop. Now, what's interesting is the desktop part of this, and I'll get into this in a second. Power Automate Desktop is not Power Automate. They're two very different things. Yes, they can work together. Yes, they do some similar things, but I want to make sure you understand that they're two different kind of solutions, two different tools in your tool belt, if you want to think of it that way, when you're building out custom applications. And I'm just gonna break all the rules right here and just start out. You'll hear well, you know what? I've got a slide on this. I'll go through this. You'll understand why I paused for a second there. I promised in the invite that I sent you that this would be 2 seconds of sales, and the rest of this is technical discussion. Here's the 2 seconds. I'm going to talk about who is Fuji, who am I, what is this Connect session, and then we're going to go 60 plus. We'll actually go close to 90 minutes today, a deep technical dive on this stuff. Fuji is a worldwide organization. We have offices in the US, India, and Costa Rica. We're headquartered in the US in Irving, Texas, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have about 600 employees, and that is growing daily. I mentioned I was a little late for getting this demo prepped and ready to go, simply because I've been doing technical screens on new employees back to back. That's a good sign. We got a lot of great business going. You can see about the engineers, data architects, etc. The one thing I do want to point out is Costa Rica. We have a nearshore facility, which is on the same time zone as the US, with our security operations center built down in Costa Rica. We've got a lot of employees down there. And then we have our offshore capabilities as well. However, we are a US-based company. We do have over 100 US-based employees. And so if you're in the Las Colinas area or in Dallas-Fort Worth, we'd love to see you sometime. Here's what we do. We do product quality engineering and what we're talking about today, this low-code, no-code automation. We do cloud migrations, advisory, etc. We have a whole security suite, cybersecurity, everything. And we're really into data analytics, data engineering, data visualization. I love this slide because of what it doesn't talk about, which is all the stuff we don't do. We believe in this concept of stay in our swim lane, which simply means if you come to us and ask for accounting solutions, we don't do accounting. And unlike other partners that say, sure, we do that, and they bid on it and they win it, and then they're like running out trying to hire someone, we're not going to do that as a partner. We know what we're really good at, and we stick with it. And these are the 4 things that we're really good at. Who am I? You can read this. I was at Microsoft almost 20 years. I went almost 19, actually, but I put it as 18 plus years. I was a senior technical person. Most people at Microsoft know me because I ran the seminar division of Microsoft. So if you've ever been to an MSDN, TechNet, TS2, small business, you name it, presentation from Microsoft, that was my group. I had 76 professional presenters that traveled the country, and I was a part of that team for about 12 years. It was a phenomenal team. One point that I just want to make, I'm a technology generalist. And what does that mean? If you're a Microsoft employee today, especially if you're a technical employee, you are most likely a specialist. Let's say you're a SQL Server specialist. That means you know SQL Server to the nth degree, everything about SQL Server. I'm old, in case you haven't figured that out, with my bald hair and my gray hair. But anyway, the point being is when I started at Microsoft, we had to learn everything. We had to learn Windows to Office to SQL Server to Exchange to networking. And so I'm a generalist. I know how all the pieces fit together. And Microsoft really doesn't have a lot of generalists anymore. What's interesting is Microsoft still hires me. Just last year, I did 57 events on behalf of Microsoft. So I jokingly say it's a lot like the mob. You know, once you're in the Microsoft family, even after you leave, they keep pulling you back in. And that's the case. So you're going to be getting the latest and greatest from Microsoft, even though I work for Fuji, still tied at the hip with them and still enjoy it. That also means, though, I gave my years of Microsoft. I don't have to say nice things. I really don't. Matter of fact, I want to go back to this for a second because this is an important point. Since I left Microsoft, I loved Microsoft. Microsoft was a great experience. I probably honestly stayed a few years too long. think I was ready to move on. I should have gone after about 15. But anyway, I don't have to endorse Microsoft. I don't have to agree or sell or say. Fuji does AWS just as much as Microsoft. We do Google, we work with Oracle, we play with all of the major players. And I am willing to call out Microsoft when they do something boneheaded, which they do on occasion. That being said, what I'm going to show you today blows my mind. This is the coolest product. And normally you don't say that, and I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just telling you, I'm super excited about this. I'm finding more and more of my week is absorbed in Power Platform, doing some of the cool stuff I'm going to show you. It's what customers want. I think it's a phenomenal platform to build on. And even though I work on other platforms and I build other stuff, this is the one I keep coming back to. It's just exciting stuff. And hopefully you're going to see that today. All right, enough of this. I promised you I'd get in. This is not going to be a sale, so we're done. The rest of this is technical. I really want to make sure as we talk today, I explain the why to why Microsoft's doing what they're doing. Most organizations don't, and I used to teach my presenters, if you don't talk about the why, people won't retain the information. It just goes in one ear and out the other. I have some help. I'm going to get going. So let's talk about Power Automate Desktop in particular. And what we're really talking about when we talk about this Power Platform, if most of you understand, what Microsoft did is, I talked about this 2 weeks ago when I did my last webinar. And I hope, by the way, you'll come back for more and more of these. I hope this is such a good use that you'll not only come back, but you'll invite some others. We want to grow this up to 100, 200, 300 attendees on a regular basis. Microsoft built Power Platform, and the truth is they promised this to the world back in about 2010. If any of you came from the SharePoint InfoPath world, go to your chat window real quick and say, yep, that's me, right? I want to hear how many of you were working in InfoPath and SharePoint for years and years and years, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be a lot of you, because forever that was the way to do some of this app development stuff. Microsoft came out 3 times and told the world InfoPath's dead, get rid of InfoPath, we're going to this new environment, and then they fumbled the ball every single time. They came out with a product and decided it was poor and they killed it, and they came back with another one and it was horrible and they killed it, and then the third one they promised and then they finally said, no, we didn't. Finally, by about 2018, Microsoft came out with what they called Power Automate, Power or Flow, basically. Or Power Apps and Flow, excuse me. Flow was renamed Power Automate. And what these products were taking what they started with SharePoint and extending it out. The problem with SharePoint and InfoPath is they were designed for SharePoint and InfoPath. Now I'm curious, no one wrote in their chat window that said they worked with InfoPath before, so maybe you're not InfoPath specialists, but many, many people for about 15 years, that's the only choice you had. When Power Apps came around, they have the ability now to build automation systems on a platform. Basically, it's on SharePoint, but that works outside of the Windows environment. In other words, Power Platform is written as an HTML program. Because it's browser-based, it now runs on Android, it now runs on iOS, it now runs on OS X, excuse me. So all the different platforms, we broke that Windows connection that you had to be Windows, you had to be SharePoint in order to build solutions. Okay, probably preaching to the choir, you probably all understand that. What is this Power Automate Desktop? It's 400 pre-made actions. And by the way, Microsoft's intent on doubling the size of this thing and making it even bigger. But what they do is they can help capture your mouse and keyboard movements. They can help you build RPA, robotic process automation, to put in together scripts that not only work in the Microsoft world, but basically capture your actions at your desktop to extend to even third-party apps and beyond. The one negative that you're going to tell me is there's not enough time today. We didn't have enough time for enough demos, because I could do this for 5 days and you'd still say there's not enough time. I'm not going to show you the recorder option. There's some videos out there on YouTube. I'll point you in the right direction. We're going to really spend some time talking about the low code, no code, and I'm going to build for you 3 solutions that I think you might want to learn how to do We're going to build them live in front of you. We're going to show you how they work. You can follow along if you want, or you can just sit back and watch. We are recording this too, and at the end of today's session, once the recording is done, I'll send you that recording out to each and every one of you, so you have the kind of follow along click steps. But I'm hoping what you're going to see is a really easy to use system that helps you just kind of drag and drop in these pre-made scripts or pre-made actions, and you just add properties to them without writing serious code, and you can do some pretty amazing things. And that's what this is about. Autopilot allows you to extract the data, put its stuff in, allow you to do things. I put in here some examples. Like, I'll give you one real life example. When I was in college, my father worked for a cement company. He was actually an executive at the cement company. They had a project and they were supposed to be building, and in Texas one year when I was in college, this would be 84 to 88, they had a really rainy season, and you cannot pour cement when it's raining. And so a project got behind, and so my father actually hired me to go into the records at the courthouse and pull the weather for a particular zip code for an entire period of time to show that the rain had delayed the project, not that it was delayed by the company that was contracted to do this work. It was an intensive, like week-long going through microfiche and looking up the weather forecast and the percent of rain and all that stuff and keeping it in a sheet that we could then use to explain why this project got behind. Nowadays, with the access of data online, we can use Power Automate Desktop to take those kind of redundant tasks of copy, paste, lookup, copy, paste, lookup. I'm actually going to show you something very similar today. We're going to do it live. We're going to look at a competitor's pricing sheet that they put out on their website for shoes, because I use a shoe store example. And we'll actually track 3 different shoes, and we'll track them over time using Power Automate to grab stuff off their website, put it in an Excel sheet, and then analyze it over time to see which products are moving up or down, what's on sale, to make sure that our pricing is comparative to them. That's a great example. Extracting invoices, having employers use data entry for ERP systems. It's all designed, it's all going to be demos that I'm showing you. So very, very cool stuff. I'm going to pause for questions here in just a second. So again, load up those Q&A session in our GoToWebinar, or load the chat session. I'll be glad to answer. There are some issues and limitations that I want you to be aware about. So we're almost done with the slides. The rest of it's going to be demo. They only work on school accounts or work accounts that have Dataverse applied to it, okay? Now, if you buy Office, you buy an E3 license for Office or an E5 license for Office, you get credits for Dataverse as part of your monthly allotment of Office. So you don't have to buy anything extra, but you do have to have the Dataverse enabled for Power BI Desktop to work, because it's using Dataverse as a way to hold and provision some of the environment data that it needs to run. So you have to have it. If your organization says, nope, we're turning off Dataverse, and I hope that's not the case, because Dataverse is playing a massive part, a massive role in some of the solutions that we're coming up with. But if they do, if they disable that, you will not be able to do Power Automate Desktop. It just won't work. So keep that in mind. If it doesn't exist in the default environment, then you'll be prompted to create one. As I said, almost everyone, the vast majority of you, have a license that includes Dataverse as part of it, so there shouldn't be any extra charges. You can buy it separately if you don't have it or don't have access to it, but just to let you know, you have to have that in order to do it. Power Automate Desktop does not natively connect with Power Automate Cloud. Now, it can do that. You can actually have the two use triggers to drive each other back and forth, but Microsoft has that as part of their premium license, okay? So premium subscribers of Power Automate have the ability to trigger desktop flows into cloud flows and pass information back and forth. But by default, without having a premium license, that will not happen. So just keep that in mind. And then I have a couple other things here. Let's see. After users create Dataverse in Power Platform Admin, they'll be prompted to create it again. Oh, that's just a bug that I think it's now resolved, so we don't have to worry about that. And then this last one, I don't think is a serious issue that people need to worry about, but the number of actions that can be logged in a single desktop flow is limited to 10,000 actions. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do those actions if you go over 10,000. You could build a flow on Power Automate Desktop with more than 10,000 actions. However, it'll only log the first 10,000. So there's a limitation on the logging side, not on the run side. I rarely ever encounter people that are running more than 10,000 actions, but just so you're aware. Okay, any questions? I'm looking, looks like there are a couple of questions that have popped up. Does the desktop version still require custom infra, or is everything stored on desktop OneDrive? So they're changing to put everything on the local desktop information. There's information, I don't even know where that word came from, in the desktop version, excuse me. They are making changes. Some of you are on the preview version, and the preview version has some new features that record to your desktop. I'm going to show you where you can go to see the preview, where you can download the desktop version. The latest version has fixed some of this. I don't think it's fixed all of this. And there's a file, a README that you can see exactly where they're going and how they've done this. How does the licensing model work? So Desktop Automate, great question, by the way. Power BI or Power Automate is included as part of your Office 365 license. It can be purchased separately. Where Microsoft makes their money, I'm just being very frank, is selling you the premium features. What are premium features? Premium features are things like the connectors to connect you to SAP or Salesforce or some of the third-party tools, right? And when you buy the connectors, you basically buy premium and you get all the connectors as part of the deal. So it's kind of a give you enough to get going, but if you really want to take it to the extreme and build some advanced solutions, you're probably going to want that premium version. And the premium version can be licensed on a per solution basis. It can be licensed on a per application basis, where the real benefit of Power Platform, and again, I'm not trying to sell you, I just want to answer the licensing question. Where the real benefit comes in for customers is if you do one solution, you're going to do 10 solutions, you're going to do 100 solutions, and the more you do, the more that license becomes almost negligible. So if Microsoft says, hey, look, it's going to cost $9 per user per desktop for you to get super premium, everything you want. If I do that and I only build one solution, then it's $9 a user per month. That can be pretty expensive. If, however, I build 20 or 100 solutions off that, it's still just that same $9, and the cost per application goes down to negligible amounts. We're literally talking cents per application per use. So I'm not trying to oversell this, but I do think once you get into this and once you start using it, the more you use it, the more you're going to want to use it, and the more that pricing option really doesn't become a huge issue. I have a massive pricing guide. It took me about 2 weeks to go through all of the Microsoft licensing and figure it out. It's very complex, but I put it together. If you want a copy of that, or if you want some help, you want us to sit down and just walk you through it, be glad to do that. Veronica's on here. If you'll reach out to Veronica or myself, shoot us an email or a text, we will be glad to kind of walk you through that whole licensing. It's very complex. I never understood why Microsoft did this. It's the one thing I can't stand. In 18 years at Microsoft, I avoided licensing like the plague. Unfortunately, now I have to deal with it all the time. So I finally just bucked it up and became a licensing knowledgeable super specialist. And I'll be glad to share that with any one of you. Whether you work with Fuji or not, I'll be glad to sit down with you and walk through that. So let us know if you need that help. Good question, Dee. I appreciate you. And that answered my question. Good. Hey, that was fantastic. And Veronica just put my email up there, so you can shoot me an email if you want a quick follow-up. I don't want anyone on this call worrying about we're going to annoy you and call you nonstop and we're going to spam you. I don't do spam. I hate spam. I don't like to be spammed. So all of you, I will follow up. I will make sure you have the information you need, but I'm going to leave you alone. I hope I do have the opportunity to learn to work with you in the future. How do we get Power Automate Desktop? So now we're in the technical part. Now let's just jump right in. The way we're going to do this is we're going to go out to our Office portal. So let me pop up a window here. As you can see, I got a lot of windows open. Let's go here. And let's pull this over so you can see. Sorry, we got a lot of screens happening at the same time. So you can see I've got my Office 365. And you're going to do this. I'll just go all the way back out. We usually log into portal.office.com. This is the Microsoft main doorway into Office 365. If I had not already logged in, it would ask me for my credentials. That was where I put in my email address and my password. And then once I log in, I get to this screen. You're going to go up to this wonderful little thing for 6 million imaginary points. Does anyone know what Microsoft calls this? And we'll go on the honor system. They call this the hamburger. I don't know why, but they think this looks like a hamburger. So when you click on the hamburger, if you'll go down to Power Apps or Power Automate, we can go in here. If I go into Power Apps in particular, and I go look at my app, so I'm going to click on my apps button, you're going to see the different information. You're going to see all the things that we need to do. I'm going to go back to this page. And I need to go into Power Automate, that's why. So we're going to go to Power Automate, we're going to go to My Flows, and then we should see this thing called Desktop Flows. And so let me jump back. Let's go to Power Automate, not Power Apps, Power Automate, there it is. I'm going to click on that. When Power Automate loads, now remember, this is Power Automate for the cloud, and this is not the same as desktop. Cloud is for the back-end processes that are happening out in the cloud. Desktop is literally for my personal desktop space, and the two really don't work exactly the same way. They do share information if you have that premium version. So here's where I was talking about. Now that I'm in Power Automate for the cloud, I'm going to go to My Flows, and then you're going to see Cloud Flows. That's what we're in right now. But if I wanted to create a desktop flow, I'm going to click on Desktop Flow. And when I do this, it will say, hey, this is a separate application. It can be loaded onto your deal. Notice that it says, going back to what Dee had asked, Power Automate for desktop is included in your current Office 365 license. So this is where it's going to tell you if you are licensed automatically for this, and 99% of you are going to be licensed automatically for this. So you'll be able to download the app here, or just launch the app directly from here. Either way is fine. So if you haven't done it before, you'll only see the download app. If, like me, you've already downloaded it, you'll be able to launch the app right from here. And this is how you get it. This is how you install it on your local system. Let's go take a look at what it looks like, because I've got a version running here. Let me get out of PowerPoint for a second. So this is Power Automate Desktop. And when you first load it, it comes up with a screen typical of Microsoft products. They put in a video to train you. They have a get started tour. They've got some great templates that you can use to create new flows, et cetera, et cetera. You'll also notice at the top, there's an icon here that says Go Premium. This is where Microsoft tries to upsell you to go to that premium license. You only need premium if you're going to be doing those external connections out to Salesforce and all the different third-party stuff. You don't have to have it. And what's best is when you're working and building flows, if you really do need premium, it'll come up and tell you. You'll see that little diamond icon. It'll say, hey, the feature that you're about to do requires a premium license. Would you like to go ahead and try to apply for it or purchase a premium license? And of course, that'll go through your purchasing department in your organization, and you'll have to probably fill out forms and do all that stuff. But you don't have to worry about it. Probably 90% of what you need to do, you're going to be able to do right with the standard version from desktop. I've been demoing this thing now for, I don't even know how many years, and I've never needed premium thus far. But if I was doing a really big enterprise level deployment, then yes, indeed, I would. I'd have to update to that premium. So here's a bunch of stuff. It's a great way to learn, fantastic. But this is low code, no code. So the truth is, if you're somewhat experienced with Office 365, you're going to be like a duck to water. You're going to jump right in and it's going to start making sense. And I will show you some of that right here. So I have a bunch of flows that I have worked on, and we're going to build some of these. I'm going to start with a relatively easy one. Let's see, I got a chat here. Okay. These are the flows that I've been working on, and we'll build some of these live as we do today's session. The first one I'm going to talk about is this flatten a folder. And it's just a simple one to kind of get our heads around what Power Automate can do and how we can build these. Now you can share desktop Power Automate flows. Okay, you'll see shared with me, and I have the ability when I go into one of these. Let me load up this flatten a folder, for example. I'm gonna open the, actually, I think I already have this open. There we go, flatten a folder. Oh, it's in the other window, that's why. Grab this and drag it over. Okay, so this is that flatten a folder, and I'll show you this, and then I'll walk you through how we would build this from scratch, just so you can see. But to get an idea, when you start a flow, it's going to come up with a list of actions, and here's those 400 actions that I've already talked about. These are scripts that are already written, and the scripts have these little blue sections that you see in here. So for example, I've added a thing that says, all right, display a folder dialog box, and then I want you to get the files, I want you to create a folder, move the files, and then empty out the ones that you have. And these sections in blue are where it has properties or variables that it's asking me questions. Now this is part of this concept of low code, no code. I don't have to write the JSON, I don't have to write the C# or understand VBA macros or anything else. I'm just going to drag and drop these things over, and then it's going to ask me in blue what I want to do. Now, there are tons and tons of these actions, and it can get very confusing very quickly. I will tell you this, the hardest part of Power Automate Desktop is just knowing everything that you can do, just because there's so much that you can do. Now, Microsoft's going to make this easier because up in this actions section, they're going to go ahead and allow you to type in standard English, what is it you're trying to do? So I know I need some files, so I just type files, and what it does is it scrolls through all those actions, and it now gives me the ones related to files. One of these is get files in a folder, the same thing I have here. Notice though, they also have things with zip files, zipping and unzipping files, or merging PDF files. So if I wanted to use any one of these, like this get files in a folder, I would literally just drag it and drop it. And you'll notice as I'm hovering, I'm holding the mouse button down, I can put this anywhere in my little script that I'm building that I want. I'm just going to drop it in here to show you what this looks like. When I drop it, the script, the command sequence itself, pops up with a dialog box, and the dialog box simply asks me to put in some of the parameters. You want to get files in the folder. Okay, the first parameter I want to ask is, what folder are you trying to access? And so here's where I could type it in, or better yet, you'll notice that I have these two little icons here. The first one is the select folder. And so if I click on the select folder, here comes my standard folder drive. I want to go to the D folder. I want to go to whatever. I've got an MS one right here, so I can pick this one. I want the x86. So you can go and do subfolder, subfolder, subfolder. And once I set this parameter, it now knows where it needs to go in order to get the files in this folder. Then it goes here and says, okay, you want to filter these. How do you want to filter these by? And I can use this little X, this variable formula, and I'll explain these in a second, but I can build out scripts. Like I know I want every file that has, let's say, Fuji in it, F-E-U-J-I, right? And so it'll scan and look for titles that have the word Fuji in it, and it'll only come back with those files that match that criteria. Do you want to include subfolders? Yes or no? I just turn this on or off. That's really all I need is I'm telling it, go to this folder and get the files that match this type of filtering, and then come back. And when you do this, this is going to create a variable. It says variables produced, and you'll notice this is called files2. If I don't want it to be called files2, I just click on it and I can give it any name I want to. It has these parentheses. You're going to see this a lot in Power Desktop. Parentheses are where the computer is making a suggestion and it's saying, hey, I suggest you call this variable files2. You can just overwrite this and call this my files or my files from folder, or you can call it Jimmy. I don't care what you call it. It really doesn't matter. But what I'm doing is I'm taking all the files that match this criteria and I'm putting them in a new variable called my files from folder. And when I do this and hit save, what it's going to do, it's going to go out and apply this and put this together. And when I run this, it's going to create a new variable, and we should see this called my files from folder. Okay. I'm not going to do this because well, actually, there it is. You see my files from folder. So it's setting up a variable. This is going to be a data table. And in that table, it will put all the files that match this criteria. So that I don't lose you, because I'm kind of going around the horn on this, let me remove this. I'm just going to click on the 3 ellipses. You notice when you hover over one of these, you get the 3 ellipses. The 3 ellipses let me go ahead and delete it or disable it or move it up or move it down. I'm going to disable this. Let's just run through and look at what this thing is going to do for us. Let me describe the problem first, and then I'll show you how we build this solution. And since I'm not going to have enough time for demos, we may just run this one as is rather than create it from scratch, or we may create it from scratch. Let's see. Here's the deal. Let me get out of this. Go back to this window. So I have a picture library, and when I open this up, this is from my in-laws, and I love my in-laws. Absolutely, they're the greatest. However, they're not as technically savvy as my generation and my kids now. And so my father-in-law in particular, he makes folders for everything. And so here's a great example. These are all of his pictures. There's, I think there's 20 gig of pictures in here. There's quite a lot. But you'll see that he creates folders on the day he took them. And some of these, literally, they have one picture in here. That's the entire picture in that folder. Now, that makes sense for his kind of how he thinks about doing stuff, but I needed these for a memorial service we were doing, and I would literally have to take a day to 2 days to go through all the folders and subfolders and subfolders to try to see all the pictures in order to figure out which ones I wanted to grab and make part of this service that we were planning. This is a real life story. I mean, this happened just in the last year. And it was taking forever to do this. And so I finally wised up and said, you know what? This is a classic case where robotic process automation, RPA, I should be able to automate this entire scripting and allow the computer to do this for me instead of me having to grab each one and move it up to a higher level and then make sure nothing's in the subfolders and then delete. And it's just a ton of work that I honestly didn't want to do. So with this in mind, knowing this is the case, what I want to do is collapse all of the pictures up until a root level folder where I can look at them all at one time. I don't care about the dates. I don't care about all the other stuff. I just want to see them all together, and then I can pick and choose the ones I want. No joke when I tell you it was 2 full days of work to have to try and do this manually. Well, let's look how I did it in Power Automate. I'm going to go back to that Power Automate script. And the first thing I did was I used this display select folder dialog. How did I come up with this? Well, I needed a dialog box, right? So if I put dialog, you'll see dialog input, dialog select date, dialog select file, select folder. So I knew I needed to select a folder, so I just picked this one, dragged and dropped it. And then when I did, this is what it came up with. It says, okay, what do you want to do? Let's put in some parameters. What's the dialog? What's the text going to ask you? It's going to say, select a folder you want to consolidate. And do you want to start in an initial folder, or you just want to leave it open so the person can do whatever they want to? And what I can do when I set this up, it automatically came up with 2 variables that it added. One is called selected folder, and one is called button pressed, meaning did they say yes or did they say no or whatever. So I can decide if they decided they didn't want this folder, we can cancel it. Or if they did, let's go ahead and grab the name of whatever folder I selected and let's put it into this variable called selected folder, okay? Again, if I wanted to name this anything else, I just click on it and now I can give it any name I want to. It doesn't matter. But we're going to use selected folder because it makes good sense. And this is button pressed. It's just keeping track of whether they said, yes, I agree, let's run this or not. By default, the answer is going to be yes. And so it means I'm ready to go to my next step. A couple of things I want to point out while we're here. At the very top, you can see it always tells you, okay, this displays the select folder dialog and prompts the user to select a folder. And then it gives me this more info button. And you're going to love this because anywhere you are in Power BI desktop, when I click on this, and of course it always opens in another window, there we go, it comes up and it'll show me the parameters and what they mean and give me examples and what the values are. The text of the button is pressed, the user will automatically be given the choice of OK or cancel. If it comes back as a positive, a 1, then they pressed OK. If it comes back as a 0 or negative, then it came back as a cancel. And so I can set up little scripts to say, if they say OK, do this. If they said cancel, do that. I just want to see whatever the box is, so I really don't even have to worry about this. But if you did want to get very advanced, here's all the data you need. Here's the examples. Here's reference. Here's feedback. There's just tons and tons of great information. We're not going to need this, but I wanted you to know it was there. So I'm talking a lot. I'm talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I apologize. What I want you to realize is this is low code, no code. You should not really have to program anything. You're just going to set the properties or the different parameters that it's going to ask you, and it'll do all the scripting itself. Now, when we get into my third example, some of you are more advanced. I'm going to give you some pretty advanced stuff on data tables and how we code those and program those. So I don't want you to think this is all just kind of fluffy stuff. But for what we're doing here, it's pretty darn easy. I just kind of follow along. So once I've done that, it's going to create this deal called selected folder. That's a variable name that it'll now store. And when I run these, you notice the man with the hat. This allows me to mark things as sensitive. So I got to make sure from a security perspective, I have the right rights. Obviously, if I didn't, I couldn't even get into the data itself, but you can set all that. I can also pause at any point during the run, and I can check. I can hover over selected folder and see exactly what folder did they answer. What was the value? What is the data set I'm about to do? Once I've got the selected folder, I'm going to go into the folder, and now what it says is, okay, get files in a folder. And by default, it comes up and says, select your parameters. Which folder should I use? Well, because Power BI is smart enough to realize in the previous step, I created a variable called selected folder, it automatically added this in for me. And if I needed to, I could click. This is the difference of select folder. Select folder allows me to go hard code or hard set what that folder is going to be. If I go to the variables, though, I can also use whatever the user told me the selected folder was. Because you remember in step 1, I created a variable, I called it selected folder, and whatever the user tells me the folder is they want to use, that's going to go into that slot. That's going to hold into this thing called selected folder. So I can just say whatever the user said the selected folder is, that's what I want to use. Well, I shouldn't have done that because I put it in twice. Let me just erase one of these, that's fine. So there we go. We're going to use whatever the user said was the selected folder, that's the one I want. Do I want to filter? Here's where I could filter and say asterisk.jpg, for example, or bitmap or any other types of formats. I just want it all, so I'm just going to leave the star. Go take every single file that you have, and what it's now going to do, when it runs this query, it's going to go into whatever folder they picked, and it's going to grab all the files, and it's going to build a data table called files, okay? And again, I can change the name, I can go in here and customize this, but this is the retrieved list of files that are all set as a list of objects. And so that step is done. So I've opened the dialog box, I go get the files, and I now hold all the names of files in this variable called files. Then I'm going to go create a folder. In this case, I say go create a folder. I want it to be on my desktop, and I want it to be called consolidated. Now, if the folder already exists, it'll just use the existing folder. If not, it's going to go create a new folder called consolidated, and it's giving it the name new folder. Or if I wanted to, I could change this to consolidated folder, whatever, just doesn't matter. So I've got the folder they want me to do. I go get all the files. I open up a new folder called consolidated. And then the last step here is I'm just going to start moving the files. Files to move, well, that's the name I created over here in step 2 when I went and got the files, and I gave it the name files. So I say, go get this thing I've created, this variable called files, because that's the list of all the files I want. Go move them to the new folder, which is what I just created when I created the consolidated folder. And then it asks, well, if the file already exists, do you want me to overwrite it, or do you just want me to skip it? I want you to overwrite it. And when it gets done, the end result is all the files that were moved are now saved in a new variable called moved files. And then the last thing here is go back to the original selected folder and just empty out all the contents. And that's how I know they've been moved. I only want to empty the folder once all the files have been moved. Okay, so that's just a little protection for me in case there's an error or something along the way. I get halfway through and it crashes. I don't want you to delete anything until you verified everything's ready to go, and then you can finish this off. So let's just run this and see what it looks like. And I apologize, I have 2 screens and sometimes this jumps to the wrong screen. I'm going to run this, and what you're going to see here is it'll go step by step. It'll actually color coordinate this as it goes through. If it has an error, it'll stop and tell me the error. If it doesn't, what should happen, go down here, is it should take all of these in this pictures folder. That's what I got here on my desktop. It should flatten every single folder and create a new consolidated folder with everything in it. Let's see how long it takes to do this. So I'm going to kind of lay these screens over each other. I'm going to go ahead and hit the run button here on my flow. You'll see it start at the top. So here it goes. It's going to open up the select dialog box. So right now it's waiting for me to select a folder, and whatever folder I pick, it'll name it as selected folder, and it's going to store it over here so that later as it goes down the script, it can call whatever that folder was that I selected. I can pick any folder I want. Since I currently have this running on my desktop and it is called pictures, which is right here, I'm going to pick the pictures folder. Notice there's all the folders and subfolders and on 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 and on. And I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to pick the high level picture folder, and I'm going to say okay. And now it's off to the races. It figured out which ones. It's moving the files. It's going back and emptying the folders. I just took 2 days, 16 hours worth of work, and I automated it all into, what did that take? 2 seconds, something like that. Let's go take a look. Notice that there's now a consolidated folder on my desktop, okay? Notice that if I go back into the pictures, there's nothing there. They're all gone, because once I verified that I moved them over, I now cleared out all the old ones. And now when I go look at consolidated, they're all at the root level. So if I wanted to, I could say view these extra large icons, open them up, and there's all of Grandpa's pictures of all of the people and all of the stuff. So now I can just look at all the pictures, grab the ones I want for the memorial, and then move on. And I don't have to waste 2 days trying to flatten each one of those folders. Hopefully that's kind of blowing your mind, right? This whole macro that it took me to do, I think I spent less than an hour, maybe 40 minutes to write it. And it was really just because I'd never done it before. I was kind of like, oh, let's try this, let's try this. Super, super easy. Didn't need any programming knowledge, didn't need anything. And now I can take any folder that I have in my entire environment and flatten it in under 2 seconds. A huge, huge opportunity. I hope that's cool to you. I hope you're looking at that going, wow, I really could use that. I could do some really amazing things with that. This is the beginner Power Flow Power Automate desktop, right? That's just a simple flatten a folder example. I'm now going to go to level 2, which is going to show you how we can extend this out even further, but I want to pause and see if there's any questions. So someone asked, Michael asked, what happens if two files have the same name? Great question. It is unlikely that in a single folder, two files would have the same name, but what happens is if in a subfolder that has the same name, you put the document in twice. We do this all the time because a great example, SharePoint. We do consolidation of SharePoint. We do migration, one of the things that Fuji does really well. One of those features, those 4 things I was talking about. Whenever we migrate SharePoint sites for customers, there's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of duplication. And so Michael just brought up a really good point of what happens if they have the same name, it's the same document, but it's stored in 2 locations. You absolutely can programmatically tell it what you want to do. So when I go in here to move, here's if the file exists, do you want to overwrite it or do you want to do nothing? I can actually set this as a trigger event to say, hold on, I just found a duplicate. Now what do you want me to do? And then you can actually create branches, if-then statements. You can create loops. You're going to see a loop in the next version that I do, where I could say, if this file name already exists. Well, how would I know if it already exists? Because I created this variable. This is a data table of all the file names. So I could run an extra connection on here that says, check my current file that I'm on and compare it to all the other files. And if you see a duplicate, go run this code, go branch into this separate section. So hopefully that makes sense, Michael, that you absolutely can tell it what to do. I tried to make the simplistic version that I possibly could. And in this particular case, there probably are duplicate pictures in there. I don't want them in there, right? I just want one version of the truth for everything. So I'm okay with overwriting them, but you could add in specialized code. You could put in if-thens, you could put in all kinds of stuff, conditions, if, else if process, if file exists, which I think is what you're talking about, where I could go loop by loop, file by file, and double check. And if I do want to write it out as an exception or put it in a log file or save it to a separate place just to make sure maybe they're the same name, but they're a different document, I need to do some correction on that. You have that full capability and full control. So I think you're going to see this as we go to the next demo and the next demo. These are going to get more advanced. Excellent question, Michael. Thank you for asking. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Is this good? Hopefully I'm not wasting your time. They get better. The demos get even cooler. But I almost cried when I built this thing because I'm telling you, it saved me 2 days of hard work just by throwing it in there and getting it done. As you learn this and as you create this stuff, and where's all this going is probably a good deal. If you and your organization can teach your users how to put this automation to use, this automation, as we talked about at the beginning, can actually roll up into your larger enterprise automation to fix all kinds of stuff. Let me give you a real example. This will be the last demo I show today. When I send you mass mail, and I hate spamming people, as I talked about, I put an unsubscribe in a big yellow box because I don't want to annoy people that don't want to be annoyed. And so anyone who does not want to be annoyed can just hit the button and shoot back an unsubscribe to me. Well, I built an automation system to handle those unsubscribes to make sure I never email them again. Literally, I move them out of my system and then I send them a confirmation, you have been unsubscribed. I'm going to show you that process to see how it works. So we can really kind of extend this out even further beyond what you could do, just like, for example, using exchange rules. Before I get to that one, though, let me show you another version of this. I'm going to close this down. And let's go ahead. I didn't really save anything, so I'm going to say don't save. I'm going to go back to my Power Automate. So that was flatten a shoe. This other one, this is a little bit more advanced. This is, I call the shoe competitors. We're going to go edit this one. Okay, so again, these are stored in the cloud, but they're going to be running on my local machine. You can see this is a lot more advanced than our last one. Let me describe what this one does. So I teach professional training classes. I've done it my entire life. And if you want, we have a whole set of fantastic classes up on our Fuji website. I can point you to the direction. Actually, I'll probably send it to you in the follow-up email with the video. I teach everything from Power BI, Power Automate, Power Apps, you name it, I teach it, and been doing it for 30 some odd years. These classes, when I do this, I use a demo set that I've used on a shoe store with literally 1 million transactions that are happening around the shoe store and who bought which shoe and what style, and we do data analytics. So I took that same shoe store metaphor and I tried to create a solution that'll work with shoe stores. What this is going to do is it's going to go out using just a regular internet connection, and it's going to load up DSW shoe store, which I shop at DSW, they're great. And understand, my shoe store is totally fictional, so this is just an example, it's not real. But I'm going to say DSW is my competitor. I want to check the prices of their shoes. Now, this is one that, in order to show you this, we'll probably build this live, or at least go through part of this live. But I want to show you what this does. The first thing I'm doing in this macro, I'm going to, and you'll use this a lot, get the current date and time. So I want to create a time stamp because I want to know at what point did I run this. In this case, I'm going to go look up competitors' prices for shoes that I also sell, because I want to keep my eye on to see if they're discounting their shoes, and mine's still at a higher price and theirs is at a lower price. I want to know that. But I need to know at the point in time that this thing ran, so I know exactly at what point in time that they changed their price. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to retrieve the current system date and time. And it's set to the specific time zone or the system time zone, in other words, where the server is. And it's going to mark that time so they'll have a timestamp on everything I do. And it's just going to save this in a variable called current date time. Hopefully I'm not throwing everyone with these variables. If you're a programmer, this makes total sense. You just set up a name, you set this value to current date time. If I was doing this right now, the current date time would be Tuesday, May 16th at exactly 11:27 a.m. because I'm in Central Time Zone. So that's what would get marked under the name current date time. So it's a stamp, it says exactly what time it is. Then once I do that, I'm going to go tell it to launch my browser. Now you can tell it to launch Chrome or IE or any browser that you choose. I use Chrome. So I'm going to launch a new instance, and then I'm going to put in here the actual shoe that I want to go look up. So let's go out to a browser. I'll just open up a clean browser and I'll show you what the page is going to look like. So I went out to DSW, I'm comparing women's boots, and I put in one, and I really like this boot. It's very similar to one that I sell, and I want to look through all this information that they have on this boot, and basically I want to scrape the screen for the price, which is right here now, $89.99, was $130. So they just did a price drop not too long ago, and I want to be able to capture this information. Now I'm going to show you how Power Automate Desktop will open up an instance of your browser and allow you to select anything on this page that you see and set it as a variable that we're going to store. And then after we store this, if I go back, let's get done with that. So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to use my browser instance. So it's going to launch a new browser. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab the initial URL. I'm going to open this page. And then I'm going to create a new variable. So let me get out of this. So once I do the new variable, I'm going to say I now want to extract from the browser instance. That was what was started earlier when it started up my browser. So it opened up Chrome. It called that the browser instance. I now say go to the browser instance that you opened previously, Chrome, and I want you to go pull this thing that I'm calling Timberland price. Now to show you how this works, this is an extracted value that's coming in from a web page. And I can set this to whatever I want by actually scraping the screen. I'll do this for you in just a second. Then when I do that, I'm going to open up another browser page and I'm going to extract it for a different set of shoe. Then I'm going to go to the third browser page, extract another different one. Notice I'm calling this is a Born shoe. So this is the Born price. This is a mix shoe. So it's called the mix price. Then I'm going to close all my browsers and I'm going to go launch Excel. And in Excel, I'm going to go ahead and open up this particular file that I have set up to keep track of this thing. So if I needed to, I could actually go open this right now. Go open up Excel. And again, it's opening another window. Let me open this over here so you can see. I should have something. Whoops. Come on. I have a smaller resolution so you guys can see better. I should have someone here. It's called competitive prices. And if I open this up, you can see it's been tracking these 3 sets of shoes. And here's that time and date stamp. So I know exactly when I ran this thing. And it's pulling the shoe prices for Timberland. And notice 89, 89, 89, 89, 89, 99. This shoe price actually changed yesterday. They raised the price 10 bucks. Over here, Boring Shoes 129. They actually dropped it and they put it on clearance on 515. Now, I didn't tell this to run every single day, and I certainly could. I can go ahead and using the premium. This is something that Microsoft does charge a premium. If you want to be proactive and put it on a timer, it takes a premium license. And so if I had the premium version, I could say every morning, 6 a.m., I want you to fire this thing off. Go grab 100 prices from 100 competitive products, track them, and tell me which ones change. And it can absolutely do that. So here they drop the price of the shoe. On the third one, it's the exact same as always. Again, to show you how this thing works, I'm just going to go ahead and run it, and then we'll go back and dissect it a little, and I'll show you how we can do that screen scraping thing. I'm going to cancel this or close this down because, again, it now knows where to get the file, how to pull it up, how to do all this stuff. I can tell it whether I want this to be visible or not. So do I want to see the screen pop up and do it, or do I just want it to run in the background? Do you want to mark it as read only? There's tons of advanced options you can put in here, password protection, other stuff. I can set my variables. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to run through. And then once I launch Excel, you'll use this feature a lot, and I'll explain this in detail. But I want it to look through Excel and tell me what's the first row and first column that's free. This is how you get to the end of a data table, right? Because I don't want to copy over anything that's already in there. So it reads through and finds the first available row and column where there's no data. And then using that, I tell it write out the Timberland price, the Bourne price, the mixed price, and then save it and close it down. So again, let's just run this. When I run this, you're going to see it pop open HTML pages. Browser pages to those individual shoes. It'll grab the price off there. It'll hold it in storage. Once it does all 3, then it goes over and launches Excel. It'll paste it into the Excel workbook, and I'll have the data updated. Let's go ahead and run it. Grabs the current date and time. There it goes. It's launching an issue of Chrome. It loaded up the right page. It's now extracting the data. I'll show you how it does this. Now it's going to the next page, extracting the data, going into the third page. Uh-oh, I got an error. Okay, this is a good problem to have because I want to show you what happens when there's errors. I would like to say I meant to do this on purpose, but I honestly thought that would run correctly. So let's see what happened. When it has an error, notice what happens inside here. This is actually great because I do want to see this. I told it to extract the data from the web page, and it's come up and it said failed to extract the data, web page error while extracting. And I can go to the errors list and see exactly what's going on inside this thing. If I double click, what it's telling me is it's confused on where it's pulling this information from. Now, we can do a couple of things here. Sorry, make that go away. We can do a couple of things here. We can go back and tell it where we want to or how we want to extract this data. Now, when you do this, when you change the extracted data, the problem is that you have to have the right instance of the web page open to know which thing you're going to extract, if that makes sense. So let's go ahead and do this. It's still got my browser instance open. It's basically paused while it's hit this error. That's where I see this exclamation point here. And one other thing I do want to note, if you are a developer and you're used to being able to catch an error message, we do have an on-error command that says, look, if this defaults and something goes wrong, what do you want me to do? Had I been a better programmer, I would have put on error, just skip it, or make a note, display a message box that says, can't get this right now, we'll do it next time, and then just move to the next record as an example. Or maybe I go back and write some code to work around this error. I'll show you how this works in a second. I'm going to try this, and I probably shouldn't try this right now, but we'll give it a shot. We're going to go into this variable. I should be able to click on this born price, use the function. It's not going to let me get to where I want to. Let me show it to you. What I'll do, I'm going to use this extract data from web page because I want you to see how it extracts in real world. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to redo this command, extract. And the reason it's possibly doing this is they may have changed the web page layout so that it's now confused on what it's supposed to screen scrape. This happens very rarely. I should have run this morning just to verify, but I'm glad you got a chance to see an error. I'm going to use the same command, extract data from web page. That's the one that's giving me the error. I will drop it in, but I'm going to do it clean this time. It says, what window do you want me to use? And this is where when I run an instance of the browser, I would use that browser instance here. I have extract data from window. I picked the wrong one. That's why. Extract data from web page. There we go. Helps if you pick the right command, Mike. There we go. Extract data. So it knows use the instance of the browser. It says bringing an actual browser window to the foreground while this dialog box is open will activate the live web helper. So this is what I wanted you to see. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to go in. I think this was the Born or Linden. So here we go, Linden Boots. And now while I'm here, you'll notice as I hover, you see how that red thing pops up? It's reading the website and it's encapsulating the HTML for each part and piece and saying, look, you can screen scrape this if you'd like. So I can go in here, for example, and say, I want to grab just this now $89.99. Now, people are going to ask, could I just grab the 89 without the word now on it? Well, no, because this is in a HTML span, I got to grab the whole span. But once I get it into Excel, I can extract out the price separate from the text. So I just click on this and I say, this is the one I want. I want you to go ahead and take this extraction. It says no extraction has been done. So what I'm going to do when I click on this, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say extract this element value. Okay, so I say extract element value. And if I did that right, let's try it one more time. Extract element value. Oh, why are you giving me trouble? I think it's because I have the secondary page. What I did wrong here, let me cancel this for just a second. I'll come back to this. What I did wrong is I have multiple instances of the browser open. See, I have the Born and the Timberland, and this is supposed to be the Born. And so let's try it again with the Born. Let's see if it'll work here. So I'm going to do the same thing, extract data. I'm going to put it in here. I'm using the instance of the browser, but this time I'm going to go to the Born. And I think it's confused between the two, but let's see if it can do it. Here's the clearance. I'm going to right click, extract it. And oh, this is the part I was missing. My apologies. Extract element value. It's asking, do you want the text, the title? Do you want to know if it exists? Or do you want to put some kind of custom formula or attribute? I just want the text. I want to say get the clearance at $129.99. You'll now see it's grabbing or screen scraping $129.99, and that's it. I hit finish, and it says, okay, I've got it, and I've got this thing, and it's called data from web page. We'll change this in a second. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Now remember, this threw an error when I wanted this to run Born price, so I just redid it. I'm going to kill off the one that gave an error. I'm just going to delete this, but I'm going to rename my variable. Instead of data from web page, I'll rename it Born price so the rest of the macro works. So I delete, I go back here. I just want to rename this, so we'll call this Born price now, B-O-R-N-P-R-I-C-E, and I hit save. And so now I've reprogrammed it to now call this, just like this was Timberland price, this is Born price, this is mixed price. Now that I've retold it where on the page to grab it, let's run the whole thing again. And just to make sure I'm not cheating, I'm going to close these web pages down. I need to leave the go to webinar up, and we'll run it again. Run it, gets the current date and time, opens up Chrome. It's running on the other screen for some reason. That's interesting, but it's okay. It didn't blow up, so that's good. Goes to the third one, does that. Now it launches Excel. And let's see if it launches. Which screen does it launch on? There it goes, and it's running in the back, and it closed Excel. My apologies, you couldn't see it, but it was actually there. Let me pop up Excel here. So it opened up Excel, saved it, and closed it back down. If I go to competitive prices, you can see on 5/16 at exactly 11:39, it pulled 89, 129, $59. So it worked. It's exactly what I wanted to see. So I could go even deeper into this. This is just an example at a high level of how this works, but you can see that I'm now able to go out and grab data from any website. You remember the cement company where I was trying to pull how much rain had happened. If I have access, if I can get to the data from weather.com or any of the weather resources, every day I could just load up the historical data for a particular zip code or city, state, zip, whatever, and I just screen scrape it right off and put it into a deal, and I can just have that auto running, and now I have the entire history of weather for a particular zip code that is right there at my fingertips. I have friends that really get into fantasy football, and they subscribe to fantasy sites and fantasy this and fantasy that, and they always want to track how their running back is and receivers. Well, they can use Power Automate, and right after the games on Sunday, punch a button and go pull all the statistical data for every game that happened in real time, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and they waste countless hours going through and trying to figure out, exactly what to do in their fantasy draft or fantasy play. You can do anything if it's out there on the internet and you can get to it via a web page. I collect census data all the time. The U.S. Census Bureau publishes all the census information, and I'll overlay that over giant data sets, but I'll go capture it using Power BI Desktop. Ajit just asked a question. Can I do some more actions like logging onto Gmail or web page and reply to a few emails? What a great question. You just won 1,000,000 imaginary points, because guess what my next demo is? That exact thing. And I'm running a little late because I'm getting too long-winded. So let's go to that. But yes, the answer is yes, and I want to show you that right now. So I mentioned this. I have this deal where I will send you an invite, and you have the chance to unsubscribe, and there's a lot of steps that have to happen to properly unsubscribe you. So I made a simple one, and I'll go through and edit this and let you see what this looks like. Now, when you first see this, you're going to be like, well, wait a minute, I could just set up a rule in Outlook to automatically unsubscribe users. And the answer is yes, you can. However, that is much, much more limited than what I'm going to show you here today, because Power BI Desktop can actually extend out to other applications and functions where Outlook can only work inside the Outlook world. Now, you could write some VBA and some C#, and I've done this before to extend it out, but boy, you're talking real hardcore programming and having to understand object-oriented programming and all that good stuff. Most business users, that would be well beyond their capabilities. What I'm going to show you is I built it here inside of Power BI Desktop, and in Power BI Desktop, I'm loading up Excel, I'm launching Outlook, I'm reading my emails, I'm retrieving specific emails that match the criteria. Based on those, I'm copying those over into Excel so I can make sure that we remove them entirely from our mailing list. I then go back to Outlook and I make a response. This uses, for example, this for loop here. So let me kind of walk you through how I'm doing this. The first thing I'm doing is I'm creating a project path. This is just a folder on my desktop where I'm going to store my unsubscribe information. So it's got an address. You've seen how this works. I just create a folder, I copy the path and paste it in. And I've called that project path. That's a variable name. Once I do that, I'm also going to create a variable, and this is that advanced kind of code stuff that I was talking about. It's not that advanced, but it's very, very powerful. I want you to learn this. I'm going to set up a variable, but instead of the variable being a single variable like folder name or folder path, this one is going to be a data table. And the process we use inside of Power Automate Desktop is the same format that you'll see again and again and again. I have a starting parentheses and I have a closing parentheses. So I'm bracketing it to tell it that I'm about to hand off to you some information. Then I'm going to use an open curly bracket. And of course, just like HTML code, I got to have a closing curly bracket. And this is telling it that I'm sending it a data table array, a group of columns and information that it's going to want to store. The last thing that I have in here is this is called a caret. It's a, what is it, a Shift 6 on your keyboard. It's an up arrow if you want to think of it that way. A caret explains to Power Automate Desktop that the data that I'm sending it also matches the headers of the program I'm using. These could be headers in Excel. These could be headers in Outlook. Headers are, kind of the column names at the top. So by putting this caret in there, I'm telling Power BI that the data I'm about to store and get is coming and it matches the headers that I'm using in these various applications. So there is a column called date and there is a column called from, and that's where I'm going to pull this information. And then I've just put them in here. You'll notice the open bracket says this is where the array starts, and the closed bracket say this is where the array ends. And then all I'm doing is putting in the column headings with a single quote. And so I could put date, I could put from. If I wanted to keep going, I could put comma, subject, comma, and just on and on and on. I don't actually need all that. I just need the date and from. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, go open up, and when I tell you to create this thing called sender info, from the email messages, all I care about is the date they made the request to unsubscribe and who it came from, so I can mark them from my unsubscribe list. Okay, again, you could add a whole lot more if you wanted. I just wanted to keep this simple. But this format, the parentheses, the open brackets, the caret up, which tells it these are header names, and then the bracket itself, open and close. Each one has to have an open, each one has to have a close. Then that tells it I'm about to hand off to you all this information that's coming from these various sources. Well, what are those sources? Well, then I say, let's launch Excel. Let's set the active sheet to this sheet called unsubscribe. So again, I'm going to open up Excel just so you can see what this thing looks like. I should have a unsubscribe in here. Let's see. There it is, unsubscribe list. Open it up. It's got a date and it's got an email. I think I need to delete these. Curious if this will work. We might have it might skip 2 spots here. That's why I'm just seeing, because I had some test data I was running just to make sure. We'll go ahead and save that. There we go. Okay, so I just have a single column. Column B3 is the first open section that it has, and C3, and it should be capturing the date and the email of people who in my inbox have said they want to unsubscribe. Real cool data point, I sent out 33,000 invitations for all of these different events. We're getting a huge response. People are registering for events 3 months from now, which is fantastic because we're doing so many different topics. So far, out of 33,000 emails that I've sent, I've had 51 people request to unsubscribe. And in marketing world, that's a really low number. And that makes me happy because it means I'm not annoying a lot of people. That's a percent of a percent of a percent, basically, statistically. But this is the sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to capture every person in my inbox that said unsubscribe, and I'm going to put the date, and I'm going to put the email that they did. Now, I want to show you my email, which is probably a bad idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. So in my email here, I sent email to myself. Here we go. For multiple emails. So this one was my Fuji account. I've got 3 other personal ones, and I just put the word unsubscribe. So this is the same thing that you got. And then at the bottom, I will respect your privacy. If you never want to hear from me again, reply unsubscribe. And so that's what people do. Reply unsubscribe. It's all they got to do. I want my process to go look at my email and read through all of the email and pull out these unsubscribed. You can see here's another one from another different account. Here's another one from another different account. I did these last night just to make sure I had some. So let's go ahead and run this, and you're going to see, or I guess I should show you, I'll finish this up. So we grab the variables, we launch Excel, we're going to go launch Outlook and we're going to retrieve all these messages in Outlook. So when I open Outlook, it creates something called an Outlook instance. I'm going to capture that and say, okay, whatever instance I've already opened of Outlook, go to that. Make sure you're working in the michaelode@fuji.com account. That's my email. And just to show you, this is actually pretty complex. I used to do Word VBA macros. I'm still working on some right now. And just getting them to use the right inbox is really difficult. If I go back, you'll notice here's my Fuji account, and then I have a Myco personal account, and then I have an OnWorks. This is for my brother's company, and then I have my own second personal, Mike at O'Neill, Texas. So I have 5 or 6 different email accounts. So by specifying it here, I can tell it only to go into this particular inbox and get my information. And it says, well, where do you want me to go? I want you to go into the inbox. I want you to retrieve all the email messages. And then I'm looking specifically for ones that say in response or regard to my Microsoft technical webinars. And I added this dash test because while I was showing you in this demo, I didn't want to spin off a bunch that I didn't know were happening. So I sent these with this dash test on the end. Yours doesn't have that. The body contains the word unsubscribe, and it's going to take all of the emails that match this, and it's going to put it in this variable data set called retrieved emails. Okay, so that's what this is doing. Once I've done that, once I've grabbed all these things and put it into retrieved emails, I go back to Excel and I'm looking for this first free column and first free row. And this is by default. That's what this script does. Looks at Excel and says, go scan through the worksheet and go tell me the first free column and the first free row. And it'll set those to these variables. Once I've got that, then I'm going to put this for each loop. And I didn't program this. I just dropped this thing in and it advises me and says, what do you want to do? I want to insert a row by row for each of these retrieved emails. So let me open this up real quick just so you can see. So what it's saying is it's going to go through this loop. It's going to take the retrieved emails, and for each and every one of them, one by one, it'll look through them. It'll get the current item that I'm working on, and it's going to pass it into Excel. Once Excel gets it, it'll take that current item date and the current item from, and it's going to go ahead and plug it in or append it into the row. And it says, where should I write it? You're going to write it into the Excel instance using the sender info, that's the name of the email that the person has, on a specified cell starting in column B using the first free row. Notice I didn't say the first free column and the first free row. If I did that and I go back to Excel, it would say the first free column is D and the first free row is 1. And so it would go right here and it would say, it would start putting my data here. So what I did is instead of using the row, I hard set the column to be B, and then the first free row would be 3. So B3 is where this data will go. I go to the next one and say C and the first free row, and that'll be C3. So again, we scroll back. So this is B and the first free space or first free row, and then the next one is C and the first free space and the first free row. And then the last thing I'm going to do is respond back using their information from my Myco@Fuji account, take the current email, only the single email that I'm working on. So I'm not taking the whole list. I'm doing it mail by mail. I'm replying and saying, you have been unsubscribed to the Fuji mail list. Okay. If I wanted to, I could say, you, Paul, have been unsubscribed. So I could pull their first name or last name or whatever else I want, their company, just as you can. So again, you might be thinking, well, I can do this inside of Outlook. No, you can't. You absolutely can respond with an email, but I can't go out to Excel, keep a list, mark stuff down, do all this other intricated stuff without writing a single line of code, which is what I'm doing here. So it's going to go record by record, boom, 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 look through my email, find the ones that match this criteria. Then it's going to go insert them into Excel spreadsheet. Then it's going to go send them a response. And then it's just going to process and close everything down. So let's go ahead and run this. If I look at my emails over here, oh, and by the way, I'm moving these. I'm retrieving them and moving them into a separate folder. And if I go back to my email, right here and open up my Fuji, we should see there is a unsubscribed in here. There it is, unsubscribe. And if I go look, there's nothing in unsubscribe. Okay. And when I run this, it's going to go through my inbox. It's going to find these 3 that I sent myself. It'll pull them out of my deal, respond, mark them in Excel, and then move them over into this unsubscribed folder. Let's go ahead and run this. We only got about 5 minutes left, so I got to do this quick. This will take a few seconds because it's got to read through all my email, but here we go. Run. It's going to launch Excel, set the variables. It's going to go ahead and set the active sheet. Notice my timer's clicking at the bottom. It launches Excel. It's now looping through 1, 2, 3, and then going back, and it's done. What did it just do in that time? Well, let's go take a look. Here's that spreadsheet it left open. Here are the dates that these were done. Here are the people. These are the email accounts that I just had. So it automatically marked them. And then if I get out of here and go back to my inbox, we should see that I now have in the unsubscribed 1, 2, and 3. So it has now removed them from my inbox because they've been responded to, and it moved them over into this unsubscribed folder that I had right here. And then it marked it in Excel and logged it for me so I know exactly who got an unsubscribe and who didn't. Okay? I could take this 10 times further. If you need help from Fuji, because we do this work, not only can we do this work for you, but even better than that, we can teach your people to do this work. We can just sit back and kind of help you navigate to make sure you do it right. But if you want your people to learn these skills, that's what I love about Fuji. It isn't making you dependent on us where you have to use us forever and ever. We want to be your partner. I'm getting salesy and I don't mean to, but we want to be your partner long term. And the way to do that is to not lock you into some deal that the second you get rid of us, you're lost and you can't do anything. We're going to teach your people how to do this. We're going to teach you how to build these cool automation systems, and then we'll get you up to speed where you can do this. But you can imagine at 33,000 invites, it's a lot of work to send them, to receive them, to respond, to make sure people get follow-ups. I'm building this right now. I'm automating the entire process. We have used a paid service to do this, and it drives me nuts because I'm like, this is what we do for a living. It's the cobbler's sons, right, or children never have any shoes because he's busy making them or she's busy making them for other customers. Same thing. I want us to have this entire event system that I've built fully automated using the tools you've seen today. So that's really it. Just in quick summary. Oh, by the way, I do have these premium license features. So if you do buy the premium license on Power Automate, this is some of the stuff you get. I have tons of links in here that you can see. I'll send you this along with a recording of today's deal. And as I say, we have our headquarters here in the US. If you're in the Dallas area, give me a call. I'd love to go to lunch and we can just sit and talk about technology. That's perfectly fine. We have these nearshore deals in Costa Rica. We have our offshore. One last thing too, I am setting up, a lot of people don't have a chance to sit for 90 minutes like you did today and go through this technology. I'm trying to record these in little 5-minute bite-sized pieces, which is really hard for me to do. I can't say anything in 5 minutes, as I've discovered, but I'm trying to do this, and we're posting it out on YouTube. So very quickly, you'll see a YouTube channel. We're also building a user group, not a sales function or anything. It's a chance for technical people to get together, talk about cloud spending, which is getting out of control. Oh, I do have one last thing. I almost forgot the best part. One of the things that's coming on super strong right now, do I have it open? Do I have it open? Oh, here it is. Give me 1 second. I apologize. I totally forgot about this. Yes, I do. Okay, I'm going to swing this over. Customers are asking nonstop about AI, ChatGPT, all this other cool technology, and I am spending a ton of time on this to help customers utilize ChatGPT in ways that don't expose their information out to the rest of the world. That's really critical. So I'm just going to show you this. If you want a further demo, I'll be glad to do this. This is a help desk application, and what it does, oh, I hit the button before I put a question in. What it does is it's typical help desk. So I should stop this because I hit the wrong button. Let's do this again. I want to go back to my start screen. We're almost done. I apologize. I should have done this earlier. I'll go into my general screen here. There we go. And what we can do is we can ask any question of this that we want to. So I've got some loaded up. How do I add an auto signature to Outlook? It's just copying this over. If I ask this question, it's actually handing this from Power Platform, from Power Automate, from Power Apps. It's sending it out to ChatGPT. It'll get an answer and it'll come back. And of course, it said, I don't have what you're doing because you're on the wrong screen. We'll try it one more time. How do I add an auto signature? How do I set up a wireless router? This is what happens when you try to cram something in at the very end. Come on, come on, come on. What it'll do is it'll come back with an answer from ChatGPT. Here's a possible answer. It's not displaying the answer. I should have done this ahead of time. The last thing I was going to show you is I can also, in the process of asking the question, send it my company's information about who's a specialist and who does what, and have it read it and filter it back without danger of that information ever being added to the large learning model. So we can talk to you about that. We can secure and protect your data, but this is the hottest thing going right now. I can now answer a million questions about how do I set up my router and how do I do this in Windows and how do I do that. And rather than me paying a help desk technician to do that, I can have ChatGPT answer that, save a ton of time, a ton of money. It comes back with all the steps. I apologize. I knew something wouldn't work today. This is the thing, probably just because I'm rushing. But that's it. That's what I wanted to show you. Hopefully you learned a ton.